It didn't announce itself. There was no warning. One moment, the climbers were moving through a narrow corridor of ice and snow, and the next, the mountain simply swallowed them. No rescue. No second chance. Just silence where people used to be. This is Annapurna I, standing at 8,091 meters above sea level. It is the 10th highest mountain on Earth. But height alone doesn't make a mountain deadly. What makes Annapurna different, what separates it from every other peak on the planet, is the fact that for decades, nearly 1 in 3 people who reached its summit never came back down alive. 1 in 3. Let that sink in. To understand why Annapurna kills at a rate that makes even seasoned mountaineers go quiet, you have to understand where it sits and what it's made of. Annapurna I is part of the Annapurna Massif in north-central Nepal, deep in the Himalayas. The massif itself stretches roughly 55 kilometers and includes several major peaks, but it is Annapurna I, the main summit, that carries the reputation. At 8,091 meters, it sits comfortably among the elite class of mountains known as the 8,000ers, the 14 peaks on Earth that breach the 8,000-meter mark. Climbers have devoted entire lifetimes to conquering all 14. Many have died trying. But even among that deadly club, Annapurna stands apart. The first humans to ever reach the summit of any 8,000er didn't climb Everest. They climbed Annapurna. On June 3, 1950, French mountaineers Maurice Herzog and Louis Lequinot reached the top of Annapurna I, making it the first 8,000er ever summit in history. It was a moment of pure triumph, a landmark achievement in the story of human exploration. But the descent nearly killed them both. Herzog suffered severe frostbite and lost most of his fingers and toes. Lequinot lost all of his toes. They were carried, dragged, and evacuated across hundreds of kilometers of treacherous terrain. Herzog later wrote a book about the expedition that became one of the best-selling mountaineering memoirs of all time. But buried inside that story of triumph was a truth the mountain had already made clear. Getting to the top was only half the battle. Getting back down was where Annapurna collected its debts. So what exactly makes this mountain so dangerous? Why does it kill at a rate that dwarfs almost every other peak? The first reason is the terrain itself. Annapurna's south face is considered one of the most technically demanding walls in the world. It rises nearly 3,000 meters in a near-vertical sweep of rock, ice, and exposed ridgelines. There is almost no forgiving ground on that face. A mistake at any point doesn't mean a stumble. It means a fall that ends everything. The north side offers a slightly more accessible route, but accessible on Annapurna doesn't mean safe. The mountain's geography creates a natural funnel for avalanches. The slopes are steep, the snowpack is unpredictable, and the angles are perfectly designed, as if the mountain itself engineered them, to send walls of ice and snow crashing down without warning. And this is not a rare event. Avalanches on Annapurna are not a risk. They are a certainty. The question is never if one will come. The question is whether you will be in its path when it does. The second reason Annapurna is so deadly is the weather. Nepal sits at the edge of the monsoon zone, and Annapurna feels the full force of it. The climbing window, the period when conditions are even remotely stable, is narrow. Most expeditions target either spring, before the monsoon arrives, or autumn, after it clears. But even within those windows, Annapurna is unpredictable in ways that other peaks are not. Storms build fast. Visibility collapses in minutes. Wind speeds at the upper elevations can reach levels that make movement impossible. And because the mountain's ridgelines are so exposed, there is almost nowhere to shelter. You are out in the open. The mountain has you completely. Many of Annapurna's deaths have not come from falls or avalanches. They have come from storms that trapped climbers at altitude, exhausted, hypoxic, slowly losing the ability to think or move, until the cold finished the job quietly. The third reason is altitude itself. At 8,091 meters, Annapurna sits in what mountaineers call the death zone, the altitude above 8,000 meters where the human body simply cannot sustain itself. The air at that height contains roughly a third of the oxygen available at sea level. Your brain begins to malfunction. Your judgment deteriorates. Simple decisions become impossible. Fingers stop working. Legs stop responding. Climbers carry supplemental oxygen, but it only buys time. Every minute spent above 8,000 meters, your body is consuming itself. The longer you stay, the less of yourself you bring back down. And on Annapurna, where the routes are longer, the technical challenges more demanding, and the weather more volatile, climbers often spend far more time in the death zone than they planned. The mountain has a way of slowing you down, forcing you to wait, stretching a single summit push into something that lasts far beyond what your body can handle. The numbers tell the story clearly. As of recent years, Annapurna I has seen over 350 summit ascents. In that same period, over 70 climbers have died on the mountain. That gives it a fatality rate that has historically hovered between 25 and 32%, the highest of any 8,000er. To put that in perspective, Everest, with thousands of summits, has a fatality rate of roughly 1%. K2, considered by many to be the most technically difficult mountain in the world, carries a rate of around 23%. Annapurna sits above them all. For a long time, it was simply accepted as fact among the mountaineering community. Annapurna I is the most dangerous mountain on Earth. The stories that come out of Annapurna are not tales of near misses. They are stories of the mountain winning. In 1991, a French expedition lost 3 climbers in a single day to avalanche. In 1999, American climber Alex Lowe, one of the most gifted mountaineers of his generation, a man who seemed to belong on impossible terrain, was killed on a neighboring peak in the Massif when an avalanche came without warning and took him instantly. In 2014, Annapurna delivered one of its most devastating blows. A massive avalanche triggered by a cyclone sweeping through the region killed 39 people across multiple trekking routes in the Massif in a single 48-hour period. It was the deadliest disaster in Himalayan trekking history. The mountain does not care about skill. It does not care about experience, reputation, or preparation. It takes who it wants, when it wants. And yet people keep coming. This is the paradox of Annapurna. The death rate is not a secret. Every climber who attempts the summit knows exactly what the numbers say. They know the history. They know the names of the people who didn't come back. And they go anyway. Why? Because some mountains demand to be climbed not in spite of what they are, but because of it. Annapurna is not just a physical challenge. It is a reckoning. A test of something deeper than fitness or technique. It asks a question of everyone who stands at its base. How much are you willing to risk for something that cannot be described in words but can only be felt at the top of the world? Some people have an answer to that question. And for some of them, the answer costs everything. Today, Annapurna I remains one of the least climbed 8,000ers. While Everest sees hundreds of summits per season, Annapurna sometimes sees fewer than 10. The mountain has earned its silence. The reputation alone is enough to filter out all but the most serious, most experienced, most driven climbers on the planet. And even they approach it with something close to reverence. Not because of its height. Not because of its technical demands. But because Annapurna has proven, over and over again across decades of attempts, that it does not give anything away. Every step is a negotiation. Every summit is a gift the mountain decides whether or not to grant. 8,091 meters. 10th highest peak on Earth. First 8,000er ever summit by human beings. And the deadliest mountain on the planet by the only metric that truly matters. Not how tall it stands, but how many it keeps.